The 1970s were a decade of ruthless ambition and shimmering glamour, where the path to stardom was often found in the most private of settings. In the competitive world of British cinema, a handsome face and a charming accent was sometimes not enough to secure a leading role. Today, we peel back the velvet curtain to reveal 10 actors who allegedly climbed the ladder of fame through the boudoir of the industry's most powerful women. These men mastered the art of the tactical romance, using their charms to win the hearts and the influence of aging screen icons and influential producers. Was it cold calculation or a desperate search for a break? Join us as we explore the secrets behind the credits. Subscribe now and tell us in the comments, is everything fair in the pursuit of fame? Let us begin. Alan Lake. The first name on our list is a man whose career was inextricably linked to the blonde bombshell who owned the British tabloids in the 1970s. Alan Lake was a brooding, intense actor with a raw talent that was often overshadowed by his volatile temperament and his high-profile marriage to the legendary Diana Dawes. When they met in 1968, Diana was already an icon, the undisputed queen of British glamour with a fortune and a reputation to match. Alan, on the other hand, was a struggling performer looking for his big break in a ruthless industry. To the cynical eyes of the press, their union was the ultimate mismatch. But for Alan, it was the golden ticket that would finally open the heavy doors of the movie studios. He did not just marry a star, he married a one-woman industry who was willing to use her immense influence to ensure her husband was in the spotlight beside her. Throughout the 1970s, the dynamic of their relationship was clear to everyone in the business. Diana was the power player, the woman who could greenlight a project simply by attaching her name to it. It was widely whispered in the corridors of power that Diana would often make her participation in films and television shows conditional on Alan being given a role. If you wanted the Swindon siren, you had to take her husband too. This package deal saw Alan appearing in various productions that he might never have secured on his own merit. He was the classic example of a man who rode the coattails of a powerful woman, yet he resented the label of Mr. Dawes that the public pinned to his chest. He wanted to be respected as a serious artist, but he was constantly fighting the perception that he was merely the kept man of an aging superstar. Their life together was a chaotic whirlwind of luxury and violence, fueled by alcohol and a passionate, often destructive love. They lived in a sprawling mansion that became the party capital of the decade, but behind the gates, Alan struggled with the reality of his position. He was financially and professionally dependent on Diana, a fact that bruised his ego and led to explosive arguments. Despite the turbulence, his reliance on her was absolute. When Diana passed away in 1984, the foundation of Alan's world collapsed completely. He found himself adrift, unable to navigate the industry, or indeed life itself, without her guiding hand and her protective shadow. Just months after her departure, Alan's story came to a heartbreaking and premature conclusion. Overwhelmed by grief, he was simply unable to find a way forward alone. His tragic end served as a final, sorrowful confirmation that while he had used her immense influence to build a career, he could not sustain an existence without the woman who had made him a star. Timothy Dalton. The second figure in our gallery of ambitious romantics is a man who would eventually become the world's most famous secret agent. But in the 1970s, he was known principally as the brooding shadow trailing behind the queen of the British stage. Timothy Dalton was a young, classically trained actor with a chiseled jaw and a burning intensity, yet he struggled to carve out a unique identity in a crowded market. His fortune changed dramatically in 1971 when he was cast in the film Mary, Queen of Scots. It was here that he met Vanessa Redgrave, a woman who was not only nearly a decade his senior, but also a member of the closest thing Britain had to a royal acting dynasty. She was an Oscar winner, a political firebrand, and a figure of immense influence in the industry. To the cynics of the yellow press, the dynamic was glaringly obvious. Vanessa was the established prima donna, a woman who commanded respect and fear in equal measure, while Timothy was the young, relatively unknown protégé who needed a guiding hand. Their relationship blossomed quickly, moving from the film set to a domestic partnership that would dominate the theatrical headlines for the rest of the decade. Timothy moved into her world, a sphere of radical politics and highbrow art that was far removed from the scramble of the audition circuit. Being with Vanessa opened doors that remained firmly locked for others. Suddenly, he was not just another handsome face. He was Mr. Redgrave, the partner of the Great Dame, granting him an immediate gravitas and access to elite social circles. However, this golden ticket came with a heavy price tag. Throughout the 1970s, Timothy found himself constantly referred to as a +1. Reviewers and gossip columnists would often mention his performance only in relation to hers, insinuating that he was riding on the coattails of her genius. He was the toy boy of the intelligentsia, a label that clearly grated on his proud nature. The relationship was intense and volatile, fueled by Vanessa's controversial political activism, which Timothy was often expected to support publicly. He stood by her side as she railed against the establishment, his presence lending a dashing, cinematic allure to her revolutionary causes. Yet, insiders whispered that he felt suffocated by her overwhelming persona, trapped in the role of the dutiful consort rather than the leading man. While he certainly possessed immense talent, it is undeniable that his association with Vanessa Redgrave kept him in the spotlight during the lean years of his career. She was his patroness, his lover, and his gateway to the upper echelons of British cinema. He did not officially break free from this golden cage until the relationship dissolved in the mid-80s, finally allowing him to step out of her shadow and claim the license to kill as James Bond. But for the duration of the 1970s, Timothy Dalton was the ultimate example of the handsome young actor who found that the quickest way to the top was to walk arm in arm with a woman who was already there. His story serves as a reminder that in the world of show business, who you know is important, but who you wake up next to can be everything. John Bindon. The third figure in our rogues gallery is perhaps the most unlikely star to ever grace the British screen. John Bindon was not a man trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. He was a rough-edged son of the London streets, a former merchant seaman with a criminal record and a reputation for extreme violence. Yet, in the bohemian swirl of the 1970s, he discovered a bizarre and lucrative currency: the upper class's fascination with the bit of rough. John Bindon realized early on that bored, wealthy society ladies found his dangerous aura intoxicating, and he used this to launch himself into the heart of the entertainment industry. He was not an actor in the traditional sense. He was a personality who played himself on screen, a role he secured by charming the right women in the right bedrooms. His most significant patroness during this period was the aristocrat and model Vicky Hodge, the daughter of a baronet. Vicky was captivated by John's raw masculinity and his stories of the underworld. She welcomed him into her life of privilege, effectively bankrolling his existence. For years, John lived in the lap of luxury, driving sports cars he did not pay for and drinking champagne he did not buy, all while treating the Chelsea set as his personal playground. Through Vicky and her high society connections, John was introduced to the absolute elite of the film world. He bypassed the casting queues that talented actors stood in for years. Instead, he was thrust into roles in major films like Get Carter and Performance, simply because he was the flavor of the month at London dinner parties. Directors were fascinated by him because he was the real deal, a gangster playing a gangster, but it was his romantic entanglements that kept his name on the lips of producers. He was the ultimate social climber, using his physical attributes and his street charm to seduce women who could open doors that would otherwise have been slammed in his face. The pinnacle of his career as a high society gigolo came with his legendary association with Princess Margaret. While the extent of their intimacy remains a topic of feverish speculation, it is a fact that he spent time with her on the island of Mustique, a connection that made him untouchable for a time. For a brief period in the 1970s, John Bindon was the king of the casting couch, a man who proved that in the decadent world of British cinema, a dangerous reputation and a wealthy girlfriend were far more valuable than talent. However, the lifestyle was unsustainable. His reliance on the generosity of his lovers meant that when the novelty wore off, so did his security. His violent temper eventually alienated the very people who had adopted him as their pet, leading to a court case in the late 70s that effectively ended his time in the spotlight. He died a lonely figure, far removed from the glitz of Mustique, a testament to the fact that while you can sleep your way to the top, you cannot sleep your way into becoming a true artist. Oliver Tobias. The fourth name on our list brings us to the ultimate symbol of the 1970s male archetype, the brooding, dark-eyed lover who blurred the lines between his on-screen persona and his private reality. Oliver Tobias was the man chosen to bring the scandalous world of Jackie Collins to life in the 1978 sensation, The Stud. But in the eyes of the British press, the casting was not merely a professional decision, it was a coronation of London's premier ladies' man. Oliver was a Swiss-born actor who had adopted London as his playground. With his mane of dark hair and his intense, predatory gaze, he was the living embodiment of the gypsy fantasy that was so popular in the decade. He did not climb the ladder through the traditional route of Shakespearean repertory theatre. Instead, he rocketed to fame by appealing directly to the desires of the female gaze. His big break came when he was handpicked by the most powerful sisters in show business, Joan and Jackie Collins. At the time, Joan Collins was seeking a leading man who could match her voracious on-screen energy. She needed a Tony Blake, a character who uses his charm and his bedroom skills to manage a nightclub and climb the social ladder. The industry whispers were deafening. It was said that Oliver secured the role because he was the only actor in London who could genuinely handle the formidable Collins women. He was effectively cast as a professional lover, a role that required him to be the passive object of an older, more powerful woman's desire. Throughout the production and the subsequent media frenzy, Oliver was marketed not as a serious thespian, but as the ultimate accessory for the liberated woman. He was the stud in every sense of the word. He was frequently seen on the arm of older, glamorous women at nightclubs like Tramp and the Embassy, playing the role of the attentive consort to perfection. The tabloids speculated endlessly about whether his chemistry with Joan was purely acting or if he was practicing his method behind closed doors. While Oliver was undoubtedly talented, having starred in the musical Hair, his career in the 1970s was defined by his sexual capital. He was the man who had been lifted from relative obscurity and placed on a pedestal by powerful women who saw him as the perfect fantasy figure. He became a prisoner of this image. For the rest of the decade, he was offered roles that required him to unbutton his shirt and smolder at leading ladies, rather than deliver complex monologues. His story is a prime example of the Alfonso dynamic in cinema, a man whose rise to the top was facilitated by his ability to embody the romantic ideal for a generation of powerful women, trading his mystique for a place on the marquee. He was the man who let the women take the lead, both on the dance floor and in the casting office. Peter McInerney. The fifth name on our list belongs to the man who, in the early 1970s, brought the most chillingly seductive gigolo archetype to life on the British screen. Peter McInerney is a name respected by theatre historians today, but back then, he was the poster boy for corrupt youth. His image was inextricably defined by his role in the cult classic Entertaining Mr. Sloane. In this film, he played a young, muscular, and morally bankrupt drifter who manipulates a middle-aged brother and sister, using his raw physical magnetism to secure a comfortable life in their home. For the conservative British public, this was a shock to the system. Peter portrayed a new kind of man, not a war hero or a gentleman, but a predator with an angelic face who was willing to do anything to avoid a day's work. His leather jacket and knowing smile became the uniform for a generation of young men who realized that charm could be a currency more valuable than gold. Following the film's success, the line between the actor and the role began to blur dangerously. The press dubbed him the ultimate boy toy, insinuating that his rapid rise was due to his appeal to a specific demographic of older, influential figures in the industry. Directors and producers clamored to cast him, but they didn't want him for his Shakespearean training. They wanted Sloane. They offered him roles where his primary function was to be the object of desire for older leading ladies, to stand in the frame and radiate a dangerous, available sexuality. In the social swirl of 1970s London, Peter was often seen at the most exclusive parties, sometimes on the arm of women who were decades his senior and wielded immense power in the arts. Gossip columnists loved to speculate. Was he merely being polite, or was he living out the opportunistic lifestyle he portrayed so well on screen? Peter McInerney eventually felt trapped by this kept man persona. He was a serious actor who resented being reduced to a piece of rough trade for the upper classes to gawk at. He fought hard to break away from the image, returning to the stage to prove his worth. However, his legacy in the cinema of the 70s remains defined by that specific hunger. He was the face of the young man who climbs the ladder not by working hard, but by knowing exactly how to please the lonely matriarchs of the establishment. His story is a testament to how the industry often types a handsome man as a commodity, blurring the lines between a performance and a lifestyle. Robin Asquith. The sixth name on our roster belongs to the man who became the absolute face of the cheeky lover in 1970s Britain. Robin Asquith was not a brooding tragedian or a Shakespearean heavyweight. He was the sun-kissed, shaggy-haired star of the scandalous Confessions series. To the critics, these films were lowbrow trash, but to the British public, Robin was the ultimate fantasy figure, the working-class lad who was always ready, willing, and able to assist the lonely, wealthy housewives of the suburbs. His rise to stardom was built entirely on his willingness to be the object of desire. In films like Confessions of a Window Cleaner, he played a character who was essentially a gigolo in denim overalls, a young man who traded his youth and vitality for the attention of older women. This on-screen persona was so potent that it completely consumed his real life. By the mid-70s, Robin Asquith was the highest-paid actor in the British film industry, a title he earned not by delivering monologues, but by shedding his clothes and flashing his signature grin. The Alfonso element of his story lies in how the industry and the public treated him. He was the boy toy of the nation. At the height of his fame, he was a fixture at the most exclusive London nightclubs, where the lines between his film roles and his reality blurred. He was constantly surrounded by older, glamorous women who wanted to see if the window cleaner lived up to his reputation. Robin played the game to perfection. He understood that his currency was his boyish charm and his availability. He did not chase the serious, intellectual roles that his peers sought. Instead, he leaned into the image of the happy-go-lucky seducer. He was the man who made the kept man lifestyle look like good, clean fun. However, behind the laughter and the slapstick romance, there was a calculating mind. Robin knew that his window of opportunity was small. He milked the stud image for every penny it was worth, allowing himself to be typecast as the accessible lover for a generation of women who felt ignored by their husbands. He was the bit of rough that you could take home to meet mother, almost. His relationships during this period were often the subject of tabloid fascination, with rumors swirling about which high-profile actresses had auditioned him in private. Yet, this golden cage eventually became a trap. As the 1970s ended and the saucy comedy fell out of fashion, Robin found that the industry had no use for a purely physical object once the novelty wore off. He had allowed himself to be defined so completely by his appeal to women that when the wrinkles began to show, the phone stopped ringing. His story is a unique chapter in our list. He was the Alfonso who didn't take himself seriously, the man who laughed all the way to the bank by letting the world treat him as a disposable pleasure. He proved that sometimes the best way to conquer the box office is to simply let the ladies take the lead. Lee Lawson. The seventh figure in our chronicle of ambitious romance is a man who became famous not just for his brooding good looks, but for corrupting the most innocent sweetheart of British cinema. Lee Lawson was a talented actor from a working-class background, possessing a dark, smoldering intensity that directors loved. However, his rise to the A-list in the 1970s was propelled by a real-life love affair that shocked the nation and placed him firmly on the map. In the mid-70s, Lee was a working actor, respected but not a household name. That changed overnight when he was cast opposite Hayley Mills in a stage production. Hayley was British royalty, the beloved child star of Disney films, the face of innocence and purity. Lee, by contrast, was the bit of rough, the dangerous divorcee bad boy with a reputation for breaking hearts. When their onstage romance spilled over into real life, the tabloids went into a frenzy. For Lee, this relationship was a rocket ship to stardom. Suddenly, he wasn't just a supporting actor, he was the man who had stolen the heart of the nation's Pollyanna. The dynamic of their relationship fit perfectly into the Alfonso narrative that the press loved to spin. Hayley was the established star with the wealth and the connections. She was the one with the name that could open any door in Hollywood or London. Lee was the beneficiary of this new, dazzling spotlight. He moved into her world of high society and red carpets. Magazines that had previously ignored him were now desperate for interviews, hoping to glean details about life with the elusive Mills. His fee for film roles increased, not necessarily because his acting had improved, but because his face was on the cover of every gossip weekly in the country. To the cynical observers of the industry, Lee was the classic case of a man whose romantic choices were as strategic as his career moves. He was cast in films like The Stud, alongside our previous entry, Oliver Tobias, cementing his image as the professional lover, the man who existed to satisfy the desires of women. The industry viewed him as the consort. Producers knew that casting Lee Lawson brought with it a certain tabloid heat. He was the man every woman wanted to tame, and every man wanted to be, primarily because he had conquered the unconquerable Hayley Mills. Yet, there was a sense that he was living in a golden cage of his own making. He was constantly referred to as Hayley Mills's boyfriend, a title that overshadowed his own genuine talent. The roles he was offered were often variations of the dark seducer, capitalizing on his real-life reputation rather than his dramatic range. Their relationship was intense and produced a son, but it eventually faltered under the glare of the public eye. When they separated, Lee had to fight to re-establish himself as an artist, independent of his famous partner. His story in the 1970s is a definitive example of how a high-profile romance can be a double-edged sword. It catapulted him to the top of the celebrity hierarchy, bypassing years of struggle, but it also branded him. For a decade, he was the industry's favorite bad boy lover, a role he played to perfection both on the screen and in the tabloids, proving that in the 70s, the quickest way to fame was to hold the hand of a legend. Michael York. The eighth name on our list brings us to the most deceptive face of the 1970s. With his blonde hair, ice blue eyes, and perfectly clipped accent, Michael York looked like the ultimate English gentleman. But in the cinema of this decade, he perfected the role of the angelic predator, the young man who uses his extraordinary beauty to infiltrate the lives of the wealthy and powerful. While Michael was a classically trained actor, his breakthrough roles in the 70s were defined by a specific, subversive dynamic. He was the passive object of desire for the rich. He became the face of the classy gigolo, a man who didn't need to use force because his presence alone was enough to make aristocrats open their checkbooks. This image was cemented in the 1970 film Something for Everyone, also known as The Rookery. In this dark satire, York plays Conrad, a handsome drifter who spots a wealthy countess, played by the legendary Angela Lansbury, and decides to acquire her lifestyle. He doesn't steal it, he seduces it. He systematically charms the son, the daughter, and finally the countess herself, using his sexual fluidity and his innocent appearance to climb the social ladder until he is the master of the castle. It was a masterclass in the art of the Alfonso, portraying a man who views romance as a career move. This theme continued in his most famous role as Brian Roberts in Cabaret, 1972. While ostensibly a writer, his character is swept up into the decadent world of Berlin, where he becomes a kept man of the wealthy Baron Maximilian. The film explicitly shows him accepting expensive gifts, gold cigarette cases, and luxury trips, effectively sharing the Baron's bed in exchange for a glimpse of the high life. Michael York played these roles with a detachment that was chilling. He wasn't a victim, but a tourist in the world of wealth, paying his way with his company. In the industry, York's pretty boy image was a double-edged sword. He was constantly cast as the beautiful, naive youth who attracts the attention of older, more powerful figures. Directors like Franco Zeffirelli, who cast him as Tybalt, and Bob Fosse utilized his aesthetic perfection to suggest a man who was made to be looked at rather than heard. For much of the decade, he was the golden youth of British cinema, a figure who seemed to float through life on a cloud of privilege provided by others. He represented a very 70s type of ambition, the belief that if you were beautiful enough, the world owed you a living. Unlike the rough and ready types like John Bindon, Michael York offered a fantasy of refinement. He was the gigolo you could introduce to royalty, the man who looked like a prince but acted like a parasite. His ability to play these roles without losing the audience's sympathy was a testament to his charisma. He showed that in the decadent 70s, the most dangerous climbers weren't the ones breaking in through the window. They were the ones being invited in through the front door, wearing a tuxedo and a winning smile. Murray Head. The ninth figure in our study of the Alfonso archetype is a man who, for a brief but explosive moment in the 1970s, became the face of the ultimate modern lover, the man who refuses to choose and refuses to pay. Murray Head is perhaps best known today as the voice behind the musical Chess, One Night in Bangkok. But in 1971, he starred in a film that scandalized and mesmerized the British public. Sunday Bloody Sunday. In this groundbreaking movie, Murray played Bob Elkin, a handsome, kinetic young artist who is simultaneously the lover of a lonely female recruitment consultant, played by Glenda Jackson, and a middle-aged Jewish doctor, played by Peter Finch. His character was the definitive Alfonso of the permissive society. Bob Elkin does not work in the traditional sense. He floats. He exists to be adored. He allows both of his older lovers to pamper him, to feed him, and to compete for his time while he remains emotionally detached, taking everything and promising nothing. To the audiences of the 1970s, Murray Head represented a terrifying new breed of man. He was the emotional gigolo. He didn't just want money, though he certainly enjoyed the lifestyle his partners provided. He wanted the freedom to be selfish. His boyish, unkempt good looks and his nonchalant attitude made him an instant sex symbol for a generation that was tired of the rugged, dependable heroes of the past. Murray's Bob was a man who used his youth as a weapon. The industry quickly latched onto this persona. Murray was cast as the beautiful drifter, the man who brings chaos into the lives of the settled bourgeoisie. His image was that of the available youth, a blank canvas onto which older, wealthier people could project their fantasies. In real life, Murray moved in the highest circles of the bohemian elite. His casual, rock and roll style made him the darling of the fashion editors, who presented him as the ideal accessory for the liberated woman or man of the decade. Unlike the other actors on this list who played kept men out of desperation, Murray Head's characters often seemed to do it out of boredom. He portrayed the Alfonso as a power player. By caring less than his partners, he held all the cards. He showed that, in the confusing moral landscape of the 1970s, the person with the least to lose was the king. His partners had the money and the status, but he had the youth and the beauty, and in the currency of the decade, that made him the richest person in the room. His performance remains the gold standard for the cinematic gigolo, a man who breaks hearts not with cruelty, but with a smile and a shrug, leaving his benefactors to pay the bill while he moves on to the next adventure. Simon McCorkindale. The final chord in our gallery of men who owed their success to their ability to please belongs to the actor who closed out the 1970s by becoming the living embodiment of the polished, flawless, and frighteningly calculating predator. Simon McCorkindale was not just handsome, he was perfect, like an antique statue. And it was this cold, expensive beauty that made him the ideal candidate for roles of men who sell their love. His star moment arrived at the very end of the decade in 1978 with the release of the blockbuster Death on the Nile. In this film, which gathered the cream of world cinema, the young Simon was given the key role of Simon Doyle. This character was the quintessence of everything we have discussed in this video. A penniless but devilishly charming young man who discards his true love to marry one of the richest heiresses in the world. The way McCorkindale played this role made critics and audiences shudder. He did not play a villain in the traditional sense. He played the perfect husband, attentive, passionate, and submissive. He was the dream man for any wealthy woman who feared loneliness. In the industry, the label of Golden Boy instantly attached itself to him. Producers realized that Simon was the ideal living accessory. On screen, he looked like an expensive object that heroines would want to buy and place on their mantelpiece. He was invited into projects not for deep monologues, but simply to stand next to leading ladies, highlighting their status with his youth and beauty. Simon became a symbol of a changing era. If the early 70s favored rough trade types like John Bindon, who took what they wanted with force and arrogance, McCorkindale offered a new type of gigolo, educated, well-mannered, and wearing an impeccable tuxedo. He was the man you would not be ashamed to introduce to high society, even if everyone around understood that his love was paid for with a checkbook. In real life, Simon was also part of Britain's golden couple, marrying actress Fiona Fullerton. To the press, they were the Ken and Barbie of British cinema, too beautiful to be real. This image dogged him for years. Critics often wrote that behind his perfect face lay the emptiness of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted purely because of his appearance. Nevertheless, it was this image of the professional beauty that allowed him to build a brilliant career on both sides of the Atlantic. He became the face of a new era, the 1980s, where beauty finally became a commodity, and marriage for calculation turned into a respected business deal. Simon McCorkindale concludes our list as the perfect example of the evolution of the Alfonso in cinema, from the street hooligan to the aristocratic predator who breaks hearts not with a fist, but with a polite smile and a glass of champagne poisoned with betrayal.